All right, there we go. Good evening again, everyone. And we are winding down to the last of our um, last two classes here for the names of God. I hope we can fit them all in the last two. But I want to ask a question just before we get into this. Would you say I'm a good person?
Yes.
Yes.
You?
Me, yes.
Yes.
Definitely.
Not as good as God, but you're real good.
Wow. Okay. So, wow, that goes much better when you're on Zoom than when you have people in your audience. I was worried about that for a minute. Okay. So,
Little
All right.
brother.
what?
It's like you're Jesus's little brother.
Right? That well,
Yeah.
hey,
There
he had one of those,
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm another one of them. Let me ask about these people then. Yes or no? Good person, Elvis.
Definitely good.
You're not quite as
Good
sure as you
singer.
are me. Okay, how about Bill Gates?
Smart.
All right, how about Hitler?
No.
Bad.
Bad mustache.
I liked his mustache, actually. That's the only thing I liked about him. And nobody else can wear that now because he ruined it. So,
Yep.
how about Mother Teresa?
Yes.
Good.
All right, how about you?
What day?
What day? Today. Today. Right now.
So far today, I've been okay.
All right, so you answered those questions, some of them hesitantly because you didn't want to be honest, and some of them you're kind of like, well, let's try to find something good about the person. But
Yeah.
how did you make those decisions? So I ask, am I a good person? What did you base that on? I mean, you really don't know me. You've seen me. Okay, Raymond knows me from Good Grief Forever, but the rest of you have just seen my picture in a little square on your screen. You've heard me talk, but does that mean I'm a good person? How would you know? How would you decide someone is good or bad? So I went through the list of people, and some of them are pretty obvious. Hitler gets a no. Okay, Mother Teresa gets a yes. But why do we do that? Why do we count them that way? And I'll ask this question: are you righteous? So what does it mean to be righteous? Maybe, and quite frankly, asking if somebody's a good person can be really difficult because Bill Gates gave millions of dollars to charities and did lots of good. He employed millions of people. And so doesn't that make him a good person?
No.
Okay, so if you keep all the 10 commandments, does that make you a good person?
Closer.
It's closer, yes. So here's what I'm getting at. And our first name is what we're discussing here. But when I ran through that list, you made a judgment call whether someone was good or bad. What did you base it on?
What they did.
What they've done. And so you based, you said I'm a good person, but you based it on just me teaching. So maybe on Monday through Saturday, I'm just a lousy dirtball, right? But then, bless you. But then on Wednesday, I act like a really nice person. Well, I'm not. I mean, I hope I'm not. My wife might say differently, but my actions are what you see and what you judge. But do we judge by someone's heart? And so Mother Teresa, she did all this great work, but we assume it was motivated by her heart. And so we assume that she was a good person. I mean, she was a good person because she had a good heart. So how then do we determine if someone is good or bad? Is it by their heart? Is it by their actions? Is it by what we do? And let me go back to this. Last week we talked about every human being was born into sin. We all have a sinful nature, right? So if we're all born into sin, then none of us are good people. Right?
Yeah.
Based on that, yeah.
Based on that, right? So we need something then to help us, and to something else to based on. And I like that. Based on that statement alone, yes, we're not good people, but we have a great thing to rely on, and that's God. So let's get into here our name. It's Yahweh Tsidkenu. I love that word.
Sunhite.
Right?
Gesundheit.
Right. Sidkenu. So here's what it says in Jeremiah. Look, the days are coming. This is the Lord's declaration. This is Yahweh's declaration. I will raise up a righteous branch for David. He will reign as king and administer justice and righteousness in the land. In his days, Judah will be saved and Israel will dwell securely. This is the name he will be called, Yahweh Sidkenu. The Lord is our righteousness. So this name actually means the Lord, or Yahweh, is my righteousness, or the I am is my righteousness. And so we are in a position where we cannot be righteous on our own. We are not good people. Human beings are not good people. We are born with a sinful nature. Now we can do good things. Mother Teresa did great things. Bill Gates has done some good things. Guess what? Hitler did some good things.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the bad things way overshadow anything he could have done that was good. But when he started out, he wasn't always the way he ended up. And so there were some positive things throughout his life that he did, but that doesn't make him a good person. We are talking about being righteous. We are talking about being upright, or what does righteous mean? I keep clicking. Righteous is defined in the dictionary as characterized by uprightness or morality, morally right or justifiable, or acting in an upright moral way, virtuous. And I think all those work together. So if Yahweh is my righteousness, that means I don't have it on my own. How do I get it? The only way I can get righteousness is by accepting Jesus. So I cannot be morally right on my own. And I get frustrated sometimes when we talk about people, especially at funerals. We talk about people, and if they did some good things, then we suddenly paint them as this wonderful person who was full of righteousness. We as human beings cannot make ourselves righteous. We cannot do anything to get it. We can only ask God to put it into us. Again, morally right or justifiable. So before God, we are not justified unless we accept Jesus Christ. That's why Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So we have to accept Jesus. But when we accept Jesus, then he gives us righteousness, or we become morally acceptable to God. Keep in mind, God cannot tolerate sin, and we are by nature sinful creatures. And so he can't tolerate us unless we become righteous. And again, we can't become righteous on our own. We can't earn it. We can't do enough to be good. And we have to accept Jesus Christ. Most of my life, I've seen religion as a list of do's and don'ts. And what frustrated me is when I was really young, we had this list of do's and don'ts. And some of the don'ts were things like dice and neckties, and well, that wasn't when I was young. That was way before me. But I saw those things, as previously were not right. But when I was young, dancing was bad, cards were bad, dice were bad, alcohol was bad. Alcohol is bad. Let's see what else.
Wearing shorts in church.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Wearing shorts in church. Oh, wow. Yeah. I remember the first time I dealt with that on a personal level. I was a young teen, and the usher wasn't there, and somebody tapped me and said, hey, will you help us take offering? And I took up offering wearing shorts. And you would have thought that I was the devil himself trying to steal the money. It was crazy. And I'm like, okay, wait. Yeah. Wearing shorts in church was bad.
But was it the 80s style John Stockton shorts, or was it the Jordan long shorts?
I definitely wasn't aware enough to have anything stylish on.
Okay.
So it was probably more like the Kmart Blue Light Special jean shorts,
Okay.
which I
We
still
have to pray for that. Okay.
still wear. Okay, so the problem with that is, as I've lived my life, dancing is. I have a real problem saying dancing is a sin because the Bible says dance before the Lord, and the Bible
Yeah.
won't command you to sin. So then we have to get into what kind and all that, and it's all convoluted. Dice. Okay, well, they use dice for chance, right? Well, isn't that what casting lots was, kind of? So, and what my problem is things that were sin 50 years ago, and this applies to words too. There were words that you couldn't say 50 years ago that you can say now that are completely acceptable, and it probably will be the same in another 50 years. But what I'm getting at is Jesus, God doesn't change. And so if it was sin, it's always going to be sin. I personally don't think playing Yahtzee is a sin. I like Yahtzee. In fact, I like Farkle even better. If you don't know Farkle, that's a really fun little dice game.
That's something you couldn't have said 50 years ago.
That is true. Oh yeah, I probably would have been arrested if I said that. But these are all things that have changed, and I personally don't like that when we measure our behavior as good and bad based on what we do, because I know people who are really bad people inside, but they make it look like they're great people on the outside. And I know the reverse of that. I know some really good people that have done some really bad things, but I don't think that makes them a bad person. So again, the point of all this is Jesus, God makes us righteous. God is my righteousness. The only way that I can be righteous is to accept God. And God, I believe, will show us how to live within that. And so we need to understand, I can't do enough. I can't be good enough. I can't get rid of enough sin in my life. I can't refrain from enough things to make me righteous. The only way I can be righteous is to have God as my righteousness, or the I am is my righteousness. And so we accept Jesus and we become righteous. So if we are righteous, then we will live a certain way. And this is where we come back to some of those things we just talked about. If we are righteous, we will desire to live an upright life. Now that word upright is funny because when I say upright, I think of standing up, like I'm upright. And the opposite, I guess, is fallen down or something, which is spiritually speaking true. If we're upright, we're still walking, we're still moving forward. But if we fall down, then we're probably stuck, or we're caught in a trap or a sin or something. So if we are righteous, we will desire to live an upright life. Now, that doesn't mean we're always going to live an upright life. That doesn't mean we're always going to live a moral life. We still have thoughts and attitudes and temptation and all those things to deal with. But if we truly have been made righteous by God, then we will try to live an upright life. And then we will agree with God on sin and evil. This sounds really like easy. Sometimes I call these duh statements when I make statements that are just like, yeah, okay. But when you really begin to think about that and we really begin to break that down, do we always agree with God what sin is and what evil is? And I maintain that we don't. I maintain that we struggle with trying to justify evil, trying to justify sin, trying to keep some of it around, and we sometimes argue with God. Now, I'm really good at justifying things. In fact, I've been told I should be a politician because I can spin anything, which is not a good thing. That's not a compliment, but I can spin things around. And so I have these times where I argue with God. Well, it can't really be a sin because, and then it's like, no, God sets what's sin. So it is or it isn't. And if God says it is, then it is. The end. Now, all those examples I gave you, let's take neckties because I love neckties. I collect neckties. Neckties were a sin 50 years ago, 60 years ago in the church because they were too worldly. And now nobody even cares if you wear a necktie. In fact, in some places, if you don't have one on, you're considered, sinful. So did God change? No, but we have to agree with God on what is sin and evil. And that was a long conversation where we had to say, I don't really think that God is upset with neckties because they're not in the Bible. Thou shalt not wear neckties. And so we have that conversation, but we have to agree with God. What is sin and what is evil? And he gets to set that. We just have to agree. And it's really easier said than done. I think we argue with God far more than we realize. But in all of that, if we are living a righteous life, we experience grace. And this is where God becomes really amazing to me. Amazing grace. Boy, that'd be a good song, wouldn't it? Somebody should write a song about that. We experience grace. Grace is not, grace is this gift of God. It's this outpouring of his kindness, and mercy is not getting what we deserve. So grace is getting what we don't deserve, like gifts and things. And then mercy is not getting what we do deserve, like punishment and that kind of thing. But we experience this grace. We, again, are sinners. We, again, don't deserve anything except death. But God, in his love and his awesomeness, has poured out his grace on us. And so he allows us to be righteous. Now, think about this. The creator of the universe, holy and perfect, and then we try to live an upright life. He makes us righteous when we accept Christ. But what if we sin? What if we reject a righteous walk? Does God kick us out? I've heard people say 3 strikes and you're done. Thank God he isn't that way, because we would all be in trouble, I think. I know I would be, because I'm pretty sure I burned those 3 strikes before I got out of my preteen years. So it's God's grace that he pours out onto us, that we don't get what we deserve, and he continues to love us. And so if we do sin, if we do fail, if we do embrace evil, then we have to come back to the Lord and ask for forgiveness, and we will see that grace, because he will forgive us. And we say, God, I'm sorry, please forgive me. And then he will restore us to righteousness. And so he will allow us to experience that grace. And that is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I say that jokingly, but grace, there's no better word, I think, to describe grace than amazing, because I am in awe of his grace. It is truly amazing to understand what we deserved and what he gave, and that he gave his only son, who was righteous and perfect, for us who are not. And that's a tremendous gift. So because of his grace, we can stand in God's presence. We can stand in God's presence. And I mean that twofold. I mean that now because, again, God can't tolerate sin. So if we have sin, then we can't come before the Lord. But because of God's grace, Jesus Christ allows us to come before the Lord and to stand before him. And so we can worship, we can spend time in his presence, we can stand there with him, because Jesus has made us righteous. God has allowed us to be righteous. So we can stand in his presence here, but more importantly, we will be allowed to stand in his presence for eternity. Again, if we went to heaven and our merits were based on what we had done, we'd all be in trouble. None of us could make the case that we're good people. But if our case is, hey, I was a terrible sinner and Jesus forgave me, I trusted in him, then he'll say, okay, now you can stand in God's presence because of the gift of Jesus Christ. And so God, our righteousness, will allow us to come into his presence and be right before him and allow us to be there with him. And so we need to be made righteous, and we need to allow God to do that. And we really need to break this idea that it's something I do to become righteous. It's not. It's just not. It's something he gives us, and then it's something we try to develop, certainly, and live in, but only God can make us righteous. So that is Yahweh Tzidkenu. God, or Yahweh, is our righteousness. And then the next one we have is another wonderfully fun word, Yahweh Mekidashkem. Say that 10 times fast. Or just say that one time. Mekidashkem. I still have to think it in my head before I say it, so I make sure I get it right.
I'll order that once in a while at this one restaurant.
No, I think that was something different.
Oh, something. Okay.
I hope you oh my God, that's Mastacholi.
Oh, that could be it.
So what does this mean? Well, let's look at our scripture here. We got two scriptures for this one. Exodus, come back, Exodus. Exodus 31:13 says this. Tell the Israelites, you must observe my Sabbaths, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, so that you will know that I am the Lord who consecrates you, or Yahweh Mekideshkem. Now, in Leviticus 28, same phrase, it's translated a little bit differently. Consecrate yourselves and be holy, for I am Yahweh your God. Keep my statutes and do them, for I am the Lord who sets you apart. Yahweh Mekideshkem. And so this word actually means a couple different things. And I gave you a blank there, and it says this means, there it is. This means blank, right? If you have that. So here you can pick any one of these that you want. It means Yahweh sanctifies me, or the I am sanctifies me, or the I am consecrates me. Yahweh consecrates me, or Yahweh set me apart, or the I am has set me apart, or Yahweh makes me holy. I am makes me holy. Those are all the same. Those are all the same concept. They're all the same word in Hebrew, but they all have these kind of slightly different meanings. And so we have to understand that all of these words kind of mean the same, and they all work together in unison to explain to us who God is, but also telling us who to be. So he says the I am who sanctifies, consecrates, sets apart, makes holy. So again, we go back to the last one. It is God who makes us righteous. It is God who makes us holy. It is God who makes us set apart. It is God who sanctifies us. So why is holy important? Being holy is important because the Bible tells us without holiness, no one will see the Lord. So that's my case for why it's important, because I want to see the Lord. I want to stand before him in heaven, and I want to spend eternity with him. So I would like to see the Lord. Therefore, holiness is extremely important. And again, if it's Yahweh who makes us holy, then I have to come to Yahweh and expect him to, or to ask him and expect that he will make me holy. So holiness is very important. And just like we talked about with righteousness, nothing we do can make us holy. And again, this is kind of an interesting thing. I'm working on another book about holiness, and I'm convinced that we look at holiness a lot like we look at righteousness. Holiness is I don't do these certain things. I heard this phrase when I was young. I don't drink, I don't chew, and I don't chase after women who do. Okay, great. I mean, you could be an axe murderer, but if you don't do those three things, somehow you're holy. No, that's not it. Holiness is not a handful of things that we do or do not do. It is something that God bestows upon us. And just like righteousness, he gives that to us. So what does holy not mean? And again, I'll spare you the whole length of my book that I'm writing, but one thing that I want to get across is that holiness is not perfection. Okay, so church people immediately go, wait a minute. Did you just say that? God is holy. Yes. God is perfect. Yes. That doesn't mean those two are equated. God is holy. Yes. But only God is perfect. We are not perfect. And it's funny, we tend to equate holiness with perfection. And so if you read through the Old Testament, it says that the place was holy. Let's see. The burning bush said to Moses, take your shoes off because the ground upon which you stand is what?
Holy.
Holy. So how can ground be perfect? How can ground be without sin? It can't. But what that ground is set apart, because that ground was not like any other ground, because God was there, Yahweh was there, and he sanctified that ground. He set that ground apart. That bush was on fire, but it wasn't burning up. So that ground was holy ground. It was specifically God's presence that set that place apart. In fact, that's why Moses said, hey, I need to go see what's going on over there because it looks like a fire, but the bush isn't burning up. And so holiness is not perfection. Holiness is to be set apart, to be consecrated, to be sanctified. The Hebrew word is kadosh, and kadosh means set apart. And so if we think about it, I mean, all these are big church words: consecrated, sanctified, hallowed, dedicated. Those are all good words. But simply put, holy is set apart. So God said, Israel, you are holy. Did the people of Israel act holy?
No.
No. If you've read the Old Testament, no. Okay, King David, you're holy. You're a man after God's own heart. And King David, he was holy, right? So he didn't ever sin.
Wrong.
Oh, wrong. He sinned. In fact, in one episode, I think he sinned about 13 times, right? So he sinned. So he can't be holy and sin, right? Yes, he can, because God set him apart. He was set apart as king. He was set apart as God's chosen. He was set apart as anointed by God, and he was chosen. Israel was chosen by God. They were set apart to be the chosen people. And one of the things that frustrates me that we miss in that is that does not mean God loves the Israelites more than anyone else. Does not mean that God chose them and everybody else was just chopped liver. He chose the Israelites to be the line from which his son was born. So that's what made them holy. They were set apart. They were chosen to not be like everyone else, and so they were set apart. So kadosh in Hebrew means holy, set apart, and so God sets things apart. That's how you can have ground that's set apart. That's how you can have an altar that's set apart. That's how the temple can be called the Holy of Holies or the holiest of holies, because it's the most set apart. So you have the regular courtyard, and then you have the Holy of Holies. Who can go in the Holy of Holies? Well, very few people, right? And then you have the most holy place, or the holiest of holies. Who can go in there? Well, only one person, high priest, and only certain times a year. So you see how that's set apart. It's not just anybody can come in whenever they want. It's completely set apart. And so that's what it means to be holy. It means that we're set apart by God. And if we accept Jesus Christ and he makes us righteous, then we are morally right before him. And then he sets us apart to do his work and to be his followers. And so that's what holiness really means. And again, I wish I could do 10 lessons on it, because we could really dig into holiness and never hit it all. But we'll just suffice to say it means set apart and consecrated, sanctified. Those all mean the same thing. And so, like righteousness, holiness cannot be earned, but it is given when we accept Jesus. And so nothing I do, I don't have to pray so many times. I don't have to give so much money to the church. I don't have to, stop wearing my shorts and put on, long pants, or for women wear a dress, or cover my head, or any of the things that we think of, kind of religious habits. But we cannot earn holiness. It is God setting us apart, saying, you're not going to be like everyone else. You're going to be different. I want you to be different. And so that's what it means to be holy. And God puts that in us. He gives us that opportunity when we accept Jesus Christ. So apart from Jesus Christ, you can't be holy, at least not the way God considers holy. So if we're holy, what does that mean? It means we're separated. We're set apart from the world. So the New Testament says we're in the world, be in the world, but not of the world. So obviously we're still in the world because we all live here, but don't be of the world. And so, I don't know, let's just take, hypothetically, say there was like a worldwide pandemic that happened. And so America goes crazy because there's a pandemic. And then suppose, hypothetically, that during that pandemic, it was an election year, and there was a very heated debate going on about who was going to be president. Just suppose if that ever were horribly to happen, what would the world be like? Well, the world is full of anger, bitterness, hatred, intolerance, fear, and probably many, many other things that I can't list right now. But that's exactly what we're facing. So when I look at Christians and when I look at my own life, am I separate from the world? And I'll be honest, I get really frustrated with Facebook and with Christians in general, because I read some of the things and I hear some of the things that people say and post, and it's not Christ-like. And I wonder, are we fully aware that we're supposed to be separated from the world? The world should look at us differently. The world should recognize that Jesus Christ has made us righteous and he's made us holy, so we're not like the world. And so when the world looks at people and they're unloving and unkind, they should look to the church, and what should they see? They should see love and kindness. They should see that the church people are different because we're separated from the world. And unfortunately, especially in politics, there is so much hatred and vitriol directed both directions that I wonder, do people realize that we're supposed to be separated from the world? Do people realize this world isn't our home? Like, we try to get comfortable here, but man, I'm not going to stay here. I'm only here temporarily. I'm renting this place. And then I have a place to go in eternity that is not, it's not rented anymore. And so we are called to be separate from the world, but quite frankly, I'm not sure that Christians today are all that separated from the world. So we need to be separated. We need to be different. And then we need to be dedicated to the Lord. We need to be dedicated. So again, the word means consecrated or dedicated or set apart for holy use. So our lives need to be dedicated to the Lord. And that has to be by our own choice and declaration. God's not going to force us. God's not going to demand us to do anything. Otherwise, free will wouldn't exist. So he has given us free will. So we have to choose to dedicate our lives to him. He's asked us to be set apart, and then we choose to accept that, and we choose to be dedicated to him. And we're getting ready to have a baptism here in the next, hopefully in the next 2 weeks. And what a beautiful way to start off expressing that you're not like the world. I mean, what a weird concept that we like dunk people underwater and then they come up and we're all happy. Well, that's a way to show that we've dedicated our lives to the Lord. We're set apart. We're not like everybody else. Other people see that ritual and they're like, well, what's the purpose of that? But it's to show that we're different. We're dedicated to the Lord, and we're setting ourselves different from the world. So we're set apart. We're set apart. And I say this, you would say, well, that's A, isn't it? Yes, A is separated from the world, but B, we're set apart within the world that we live in. And so we may be set apart for specific ministry, for a specific lifestyle. We may be given specific rules. In the Bible, sometimes God would come to people and say, make them a Nazirite. And they had specific rules that they had to follow that other people didn't. And he didn't demand that everybody was a Nazirite, but certain people he did. And some of the prophets, he gave them kind of some odd rules to live by, but he can do that. And so God can set us apart however he chooses so that we're not like the others. And me personally, God has set me apart as pastor, as a teacher, as a pastor, as somebody who understands some things about the Bible, far less than I would like, but I've dedicated my life to learning the word and learning about Hebrew and learning about Greek and just being excited about sharing that with other people. And so that's how God set me apart. Again, I'm set apart because I'm a Christian. I'm set apart because I'm not supposed to be in the world, but then he specifically set me apart and said, I want you to be a pastor. And so he may set you apart as whatever he has set you apart as. He may ask you to preach. He may ask you to teach. He may ask you to just work with students. He may ask you to do anything. And it's not, always just your vocation. He may ask you just to do something tomorrow that might seem weird, but he knows what he's doing. And so he can set us apart in that as well. And
Hey, Jeremy.
Yes.
There's a young lady that I recruited years and years ago, and her name's Rachel. And, she got married after college, and they had they had a couple children, and her second child, I don't know the exact title of their illness, but it was something that was to the point where they were going to be in a vegetative state very soon, was what the doctor said. You know, you can after they were born, within a week, they said, no, this is what their condition is. And, you know, he'll be in a vegetative state within a few months. And then if he gets past a year, you might get a year and a half or 2 years, and that'd be it.
Wow.
Well, he passed away, but he passed away 3.5 years later.
Wow.
Wow.
Almost 4, actually. And Rachel shared on Facebook, you know, kind of, you know, he went home and the thing, and I always knew Rachel was more of a party kid, but I also saw her grow up through those 4 years in college.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that she said, which really kind of, you know, I hardly ever do anything with Facebook and then feel like I have to wipe a tear. But in this case, she said, my grandpa took me aside and said, God set you apart because he knew that there was going to be something special for you. He had something special for you. And then, of course, her response was, why did he leave? Why did I lose my little boy then? And he said, that was the season he needed to do that.
Right.
He needed to set apart, and you don't know what he's going to use you for later because of this training.
Right.
And that's the other, I mean, that's the other part of it. It isn't just about our jobs. It isn't just about our personalities. It's sometimes about our experiences.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, it all works together. And you know, we like the parts where we're set apart and blessed, but we sometimes kind of skip over the parts where we're set apart in misery, or set apart in suffering, or set apart in the world coming against us, or all those things. So that's a great point. We are set apart in a lot of ways, and I like what I like to equate this to is in my kitchen. I have a lot of tools. I have a lot of kitchen stuff, but I don't like unitaskers. I don't like things that only do one thing. They just take up space. And so I like things that can do multiple things. So I don't have a food processor. I have knives. And so that's just how I roll. But I do have in my kitchen one unitasker, and it only has one job. You know what that is? A fire extinguisher. It has one purpose, it has one job, and it sits there and waits in case it's ever needed. And I think of that and I think, how often do we get so ramped up and excited about what we're going to do in life when God may say, I have a job for you, but just not yet. And I talked earlier about my patience. God's really been testing my patience. And so he's telling me this as I share it with you. Sometimes we just sit and wait. It's not time yet. It's not that season yet. And when it is, then we'll see that moment to be set apart. And so I think of the fire extinguisher, and I think, what a holy example of it just sits and waits patiently. And then when there's a fire, it comes and puts it out, hopefully. And so we need to be like that in life. So being set apart, and I'll move on after this. Being set apart brings freedom. And a lot of people think it's the exact opposite. A lot of people see the church and they see God as restrictive, and he only has given us all these rules to live by, and he doesn't want us to have any fun. That's not true. That's the way the world paints it. But I like to use this analogy, and I may have shared this in one of my classes on here before, but bear with me as I go through it again. If you have a toddler and you live on a very busy street, do you just let your toddler have freedom and say, hey, go play wherever you want to? No, because that's dangerous and horrible parenting. But you may put up a fence around your yard. Now, did you put up that fence because you hate your child? Did you put up that fence because you want to punish your child? Did you put up that fence because you don't want your child to experience all that the world has to offer? No. You put up that fence, which is a barrier, so that your child could have freedom, so that you can let your child run around the yard freely and not worry about where your child is going to get hurt or where your child is going to go. And so if there's something that's a barrier in our lives, we immediately look at it and say, oh, it's because God doesn't want us to have any fun. I hear this a lot when people say, the Bible says don't get drunk. Well, oh, there's nothing wrong with that. God just doesn't want us to have fun. No, God understands what that does to your body. God understands, and he wants you to live freely within the boundaries. And quite frankly, I have learned that within God's fence is the greatest freedom you can ever imagine. In fact, Jesus, it is for freedom that Christ has set us free, Paul wrote of Jesus. And so that's why we have freedom. It's because of those boundaries. It's not God doesn't want us to go play in the street. It's because he loves us and he wants to protect us. And so all the rules of holiness are there to protect us. And if you kind of look through it, it makes sense, right? I mean, don't get drunk. Okay. Because that makes you miserable. It makes you physically sick and it could actually kill you. And you end up probably broke because you had to buy all that alcohol. Okay. So God's trying to spare me of that. God says, marry one woman, or if you're a man, marry a woman, and if you're a woman, marry a man, but only have one spouse. Why? Because God knows the problems there would be if we tried to live differently than that. And so God has given us these rules so that we can have the freedom, so that we can live. And then what did God say in John 10:10? I have come that you may have life miserably.
Life.
But more abundant.
Oh, wait, I got that wrong. I have come that you might have life abundantly or to the fullest or life par excellence. I have come that you can have a great life. Well, that doesn't match with God telling us all the things we can't do, right? Yes, it does. Because God only tells us not to do those things because they hurt us. It's like when your child is young and they reach for a hot pan on the stove. You don't let them just grab it because they'll learn. You tell them no, not because you want to punish them, but because you want to protect them. So God is trying to protect us by holiness and to set us apart and allow us to live in that freedom. And so,
Jeremy?
yes.
Yeah, but an example would be alcoholics. When they get sober,
Mhm.
they're actually getting the freedom to have a better life. They're free of the bondage of having to drink alcohol all the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a great analogy because and any addiction that someone overcomes, they're free. They've been set free. And I hear that phrase a lot of people saying, when I was in this sin or that sin or whatever, this habit or that habit, and then I was set free. They understand freedom, right? They understand what it means to be chained by something and carry it with you, and now all of a sudden to be set free. And so that is what we need to see is God is putting boundaries around us so that we can live in freedom and so that he can protect us and keep us safe. And so he is the God who makes us holy. He is the God who makes us sanctified. He is the God who makes us dedicated or separated or set apart, or whichever word you want to use, because there's a lot of English words that mean this, but they all mean Yahweh Mekideshkem. And it is Yahweh who sets me apart. It is Yahweh who sanctifies me. It is my God who makes me holy. And I can't do it on my own. I have to accept him. And by the way, I'll close with this. That's not a one-time thing. It's not like, okay, I got saved when I was 9 years old. So God made me holy then, and I don't have to worry about it anymore, right? No.
Wrong.
Because when I was 9, I had no idea what alcohol was. When I was 9, I had no idea what drugs were. When I was 9, I had no idea what marriage was. And as I've gotten older, I've learned about those things, and I have to make choices to be holy. I have to make choices that are within those boundaries and that freedom to continue to remain. And so it's a lifelong pursuit. Every day we can choose to reject God and to not be holy if we choose, but every day he will allow us to keep choosing him and his holiness. if we so choose. And so that's an amazing concept. I love this, that it is God who sanctifies me. It is God who has set me apart. And so that tells us about his character and his relationship to us. And next week we will continue on. We have, hopefully we can get them all in. We may go a little longer next week, but we'll try to get the rest of them in because we have a lot to deal with. And we will continue to hear about God's character in his different names. So God bless you, and blessings and shalom. Until next time.